All right, I'm get started now. Yeah, I get started now. So again, welcome to the guild. This is our fourth meeting, and we're going to build our first project today, building off of what we went over on Monday, the clip paper. And again, here is our plan. We did week one, where we focus on computer vision and multimodality and understanding embeddings, latent spaces, things of that nature. And again, we're going to be diving into clip. If you were here on Monday, essentially clip, what it does is align images with text or vision and text, which bridges that gap that we had in computer vision when we tested out the ResNet models, in which we had a standard label for each image, which didn't allow the models to generalize well. And this form, please fill it out. Most of you guys already have. I think probably all of you guys have filled out this form, but I'm gonna leave this up for like a minute or two. If you haven't, this is the Airtable. You just put your Discord username in and it allows me to notify you guys for any announcements and any time that I post resources and things of that nature. So yeah, from here, let's just go straight to the collab notebook. I think most of you, again, have already gone to it. I'll leave this up for a little bit. Just copy the short URL and it should take you to the make a copy version. So kind of the blank version that we are going to code along. And I'll also give access to the final version in a little bit. But yeah, the beginning of this workshop is probably going to be the hardest because of the data set that we'll be using. We're going to be downloading like the data set through here. So I kind of looked through different ways of doing it. And this was like the easiest way to just get the data set to you guys. So this link, it opens up a zip file in my Google Drive, which is the MS Coco data set. Now, when you open this for the first time, it's a huge data set. It's like 130,000 images. So that don't like go ahead and download it straight off. Try to add it to your drive. So you should, in the top left where it says like file, there should be something that either says add to shortcut or add as shortcut or organize. This file is this first link. This is the data set in which we will train our model. And put it in all locations, just put it in my drive. That is, yeah, the zip file. It's a zip file because it contains, we have two images folders, the train and the validation, and then the train and validation captions that we have for the images. And try to add it to my drive, please. Once you add it, you should be good to go. And did you download it? To preview, yeah, that's fine. Go to the file in the top left corner and add it to your shortcuts in Drive. And run these first 3 cells. This should load the data for you. And this might take like maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Make sure you connect to a runtime, like one of the GPUs. It will make this a lot faster. Yeah, the setup bit is probably the hardest part. Let me know you guys have any issues with this? All you do is add it to shortcut and try to run the first 3 cells. And while that loads, we're going to talk about the architecture. Again, stop me if you have any issues here. This is probably the hardest part of the workshop. And I want to make sure that you guys can see like the board. Is everyone's third cell loading right now? Good. Okay. So that should take like anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes. And while that happens, let's just go back to what we are actually building and the architecture that we have and that we want to build. So you guys remember CLIP, it uses a dual encoder architecture, which means that we will be using an encoder or a model for images and to encode images into a certain embedding. And then we will also use a text encoder like a transformer to place text into a certain embedding. So the way we are going to build this is we are going to basically think about it kind of like 2 towers in a way. We have the image tower here where we process the images and see the image encoder. Here we're going to use a ResNet 50, which we used in the second workshop that we did, if you guys remember the CNN workshop. ResNet 50 is a very popular model, and it is actually in the CLIP paper. They use either ResNet 50s or vision transformers. We're going to use ResNet 50s since we understand them more right now. And if you guys remember, the whole problem with the ResNet 50 and with the CNN architecture is that there is this final, think about this as like the neural network. These are like all the neurons all connected, and then we have an output layer, right? The output layer is the same. Oh no. The output layer, let's try this again, is the same dimensionality as the amount of labels that we have. So in an instance where we have, for example, in the MNIST data set, we have 10 labels, 10 different outputs, 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 9. Then we have the output layer that connects to 10 neurons in this instance. Well, we don't want that. What we want is the layer right before that. So we kind of want to lobotomize this layer. Take it out. We want this layer. This layer gives us an embedding representation of the images. In ResNet 50's instance, it is 248 dimensions. So that is what we want to do for our images. And remember, the final goal is to place them in the same embedding space. So this number, 2048, has to match with the text encoder. In the case of the text encoder, we have this architecture. This would be our transformer. Transformer, just think of like a GPT model, something that encodes text. So we give it a sentence. What happens here basically is that we give a sentence, welcome to the guild. it tokenizes the sentence. So right now, let's just think word by word. It tokenizes welcome into its own token. We separate to into its own token, the into its own token, and for every word or every tokenized for every like small bit of text in that text in that sentence. So now we have the tokenized version. Now these tokenized versions in the embedding space, they represent again some vector the same way here, some vector that just tells its position within the latent space of the text encoder. So in the text encoder's instance, this is a 500. This is a 506. This is a 768 dimensional space. Now, from here, remember, we want to place these in the same latent space. So this is in a 768 dimensional latent space. The images are placed in a 2048 dimensional latent space. So we want to attach something that projects these two dimensions to the same space. These are what we call projection heads. So think about this. We took off this output layer. We're going to replace it with something called a projection head. Projection head. What this does is this projects, again, like literally as the name says, we put one in both. We project the 2048 dimensions to a shared dimension with this one. So what we're going to settle with is 512 dimensions. This is what they went with in the original paper. This is a big enough dimensional space in which we can find patterns within the data and find like the separation between the points, but not too big that the dot product will be too difficult to compute. So think about this. We have, again, an image. We have, again, a picture of a famous cat. It's always the example I use. We pass it through the image encoder. It is represented now as a 2048 dimensional embedding. And then we pass it through a projection head, which results in us being in a shared latent space. And then we do the same thing with this. So we have the image of the cat here. Here, it would be something like the caption photo of a cat. We pass this through the transformer. Again, this is now represented as a 708 dimensional embedding, and we project this into a 512 dimensional space. So now think of basically what we did here as putting the embeddings of the image encoder, think about them being here, in the same room as the embeddings of a transformer, of a text encoder. Put them, let's pretend these are like the different embeddings. And our goal is to align the image that corresponds with the caption, align them more closely in this embedding space, and then separate them from the captions that don't fit it. So what that basically means is we have, for example, here we have the cat, but then here we have the dog, or the dog, and then we have some other animal, or let's think of like an airplane. I'm not going to draw that, but whatever, an airplane. And here we have the different captions for it. Each caption corresponds to the image. We have the cat with a photo of a cat. We have photo of dog, and then we have photo of airplane. And again, let's say this is the embedding in the shared latent space for the photo of a cat, and this is the caption. We basically want to bring these together so that they are kind of aligned like this. And we want to push it away from these, for example. So we want to basically attach each embedding as close to each other as possible while separating them from the other embedding. So you end up with something like that. And I tried to I put some visuals after we trained the model so that you guys can see this more and have like a more visual sense of this. But right now in your intuition, just think of us putting the embeddings of two different modalities of data, image and text. We're putting them in the same room together. And then we want the related ones to be as close to each other as possible, unrelated ones to be as far away as possible. So has everyone's mount block ran? Still running? 3 minutes. 3 minutes, okay. So that gives us more time for a little bit more explanation. Let me see how much space I have in the. Okay, you guys can see well. Do you guys understand this architecture? I could leave it up here. It means I could write here. Perfect. So again, how we bring these together, that's the whole point of what happens in the training. So again, this is our architecture. Now, how do we train this? We train this by computing a similarity matrix. So for each image, or like in a batch of data, which is basically the amount of images and captions, we have, let's give an example of 3. We have 3 images. Again, the dog, cat, and thing. Perfect. We place them in this similarity matrix, which is something like this. Right? This is the image. Here's like the image side with the rows. Here's the text side with the columns. And okay. And here, for example, here is the sentence about the cat. Here's the sentence about the dog. Here's the sentence about the plane. And here's the image of the cat, image of the dog, and image of the plane. And what we want is to compute the dot products of these 2 vectors, of these 2 embeddings. We want to compute the dot product. The dot product basically tells us how aligned the 2 vectors are. So we want to bring the dot product, the total dot product of these values up across this diagonal. Why? Because the cat image matches with the cat sentence, the dog image matches with the dog sentence, the plane image matches with the plane sentence, but we also want to separate them or lower the dot product in all the other positions in the matrix. And the way we measure this is through the loss function of cross entropy loss. And we use 2 loss functions here, and we find the average between them. So the cross entropy loss is it's 1 over n being the batch size. So here it would be 3 of the summation from I 1 to n of the negative log of here. What we have is a softmax function, and I can explain that now as well. So when we say we want to increase the dot products, what we have here are actual values. So here it could be 9.01, 4. Or let's make this easier, easier to compute. We have 3 here, we have 1 here, and we have 1 here. And then here we have 2, we have 5, and 1. This is our dot product. And what the softmax does is that it turns this distribution, this 3, 1, 1, into a probability distribution. So we just want to know what probability does this, what probability is computed when we combine the picture of the cat and the text of the cat. So this is done through this equation. And this basically means that we're getting, for the example of the cat, right? We're getting e to the 3 over, and then we add e to the 3 plus e to the 1 plus e to the 1. This would give us some distribution or some probability, like 0.712. So now imagine we run the softmax here, we have a 0.712. And we basically, in a way, measure how far is this 0.712 away from the ground truth variable. Ground truth is, I mean, we know 100% that the picture of the cat corresponds with the caption of the cat. So here the probability should just be, I'll use red. This probability should just be 1.00 instead of 0.712. We kind of compute that difference and we add this across the row. So this gives us some value. And we do this basically across the rows. That is the first loss that we compute. So basically what this loss is saying is how much does this image correspond to this caption? How much does this image correspond to this caption? How much does this image correspond to this caption? We're seeing how well the images correspond to the captions themselves. And then we do it the other way around, down the columns. How much does this caption correspond to this image? How much does this caption correspond to this image? How much does this caption correspond to this image? So now we have two losses. We basically have a loss for the text, so loss T, and we have the loss for the images. Now, the reason we compute both is we don't want a model that learns, for example, a good image that corresponds, a good image relative to the text, and not learn it the other way around, a good text that is very representative of the image. Because then we would have a model that would maybe be really good at classifying an image you send it, but then it wouldn't be good at matching a caption. If you put a caption as input, it wouldn't be good at matching the caption with the image. So we have loss 1, loss 2, and we just want the average of it. This is how the training goes. And then from there, we adjust the actual vectors to different numbers and then compute the dot products. Again, our goal is to get this. Think if you guys know about the identity matrix, it's just a simple concept. This matrix that we have here, we want the probability distribution to be as close to this. We want to try to make this matrix. Now, we're not going to. We're going to get really close, 0.90 something across the rows, but we want to make these as close to 0, the ones that don't correspond, and then the ones that do correspond, we want them as close to 1. That 1 represents 100%. The others represent close to 0. So this is what clip is. Like, we literally drew out clip. Now, the only work we have to do is kind of translate this into code, which is probably the easier part. I'm going to keep going. If it hasn't loaded for you, just try to follow along the intuition of the syntax and the code and try to understand and see what I output. If you're not able to fully run it during this session, that's perfectly fine. Again, the most important thing is understanding this. Yes.
It's first the raw number during the calculation.
Right.
The second part is the probabilities from the softmax. And
yeah.
Then once you do the whole function, the whatever end summation, it's that number compared to the original with whatever it's what exactly.
So we are comparing, for example, this would give us here we have some percentage. So, well, percentage in decimal, 0.90 something. In this very complex mathematical way, think of what we are doing is seeing how close the softmax probability representation is to the true value. So here again, remember, we're trying to build this matrix in a way. The true value is 1. We know that just ground truth, we know that a cat corresponds to the caption of the cat. We know that that is 100% true. And we want the model's confidence in that to be as close to 100% as possible. So we want to bring that up, and then vice versa. Here, we want to bring this as low as possible because we know that a dog is not a cat. So it's a 0% chance. We want to bring that number, that dot product, as low as possible. And the raw number that we put in here, like this I, for example, the raw number that we output here, we call them logits or logits, whatever you want to say. That is just in principle what we call the raw output before we pass it through a softmax and before we turn it into a probability. So just some like something there. You know, you're probably going to see that word thrown around a lot in AI. And again, this is the architecture. We're going to build this. The data set that we use is this data set called the MS COCO. I think I might have gone maybe a little bit too ambitious with the size of this data set, but I wanted a really good model to show you guys. So hopefully that's okay. But again, this is 330,000 images, which again, relative to what CLIP was trained on, which is 400 million image text pairs, this is nothing. But for us, this is incredible because we do have limited compute. But we are going to use a specific subsection of this data set called the COCO captions. And this is just simply images, and there are 5 captions that correspond to each image. So if we're able to start coding, again, those of you who might have trouble with the actual data set, don't worry too much about it. That's not the main goal here. And we'll fix that once I send you guys like a GitHub repo to actually present on your GitHub and everything. The main thing is understanding how this architecture works. So I'm gonna keep going forward. Here we have our text encoder. We're gonna build that part of the architecture first, right here, the text encoder. And we're gonna use the Dilbert. It's just a lightweight model we can use. And this just allows us, again, to use some really high, some very accurate and high level text representations, but without much compute. So we're going to load this model. We're going to load both the tokenizer, which again splits the words into some kind of unique separation between the numbers, and then we're going to have the model itself. Right. And this is just an example of the text. So this is our text, and we want to see how the tokenization works. So here we're just going to code, again, just to visualize the tokenization, we just pass it through the tokenizer object. So here is our sample text. This is basically this photo of a cat or this welcome to the guild. We pass it through a tokenizer and we return tensors. Make sure that you put this part, make sure that we return it instead of just like a simple list, we return it in the actual data structure that we use across all of deep learning, which is a PyTorch tensor, or just any tensor. TensorFlow, JAX, they all work with tensors. And if you run this code block after this, you're going to see these outputs. Remember, just try to think of everything in tensors and dimensionality. It's very important. So let's just quickly discuss the shape of these objects. We have the embedding shape, which you see is 1 by 15 by 768. Now, what does that mean? This literally just means what we drew out here. We have one. The one means that we have one sentence, or there's one instance in our batch, so one data point. The data point itself is a 15 token long sentence, and each token in the sentence is 768 dimensions in its vector embedding space. So our hidden dimensionality is 768. Are we good to move on from this? Here was just a demonstration of tokenization, but again, it's very important because we want to know our dimensionality before we project it into our latent space. And then here, we're going to use the ResNet CNN architecture. This, we used it, if you guys remember, in the first CNN session. And we're just going to load it with its default weights, its pre-trained weights. And remember, what we have to do here is, again, lobotomize this output layer. We do not want it there. We just want the second to last layer, which tells us the dimensionality of the images. And here, let's just do image encoder. So let's declare it as the image encoder. sequential. Sequential basically means we're going in sequence throughout the layers of the neural network. And what we want is to take the -1. Basically, this is us saying that the last layer is good. Yeah. That the last layer that we have, we want to take it out. And here is an example of what this outputs. So our sample image, we're just making a fake image. 224 pixels by 224 pixels with 3 color channels. Again, this is the standard CNN training data set or image. They're usually pre-processed into 224 by 224, especially for ResNet, which was trained on ImageNet. And let's output the shape of the tensor, and you see that it is 1 by 2048 by 1 by 1. So basically, we have 2048 different representations of the image. That is our 2048 dimensional embedding. Remember, something that we do is that we squash basically this embedding into one 2048 dimensional vector. And I think, again, one of the more important parts of this whole thing is how do we translate the representation of the text to the and the representation of the image. How do we put it in the same room so that they could start understanding each other, basically? This is probably, I'd say, one of the more important bits of this code, because the rest of it is pretty intuitive. Here, it is also intuitive, but it's like an extra step that we normally don't take in other models and things of that nature up till now. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to create a layer, the projection head. Here we project 2048 to 512, and here we project 768 to 512. So let's make a layer, 2 layers actually, a text layer, which is just a linear layer that goes from 768, right, to 512. And we're going to do the same thing for an image layer. Layer equals 2048 to 512. This is basically the projection head itself. It's a linear layer that, as the name suggests, projects from an image embedding and the original text embedding to a shared space that we declared, and we declared it as 512. Does that make sense up to here? That layer basically is the architectural representation of these embedding projection heads. And then remember what I said, we want to flatten. If you remember up here, we have 1 by 2048 by 1 by 1. We want to flatten it to 1 by 2048. So this is what we do. If you guys remember in MNIST, when we had the 28 by 28 image and we flattened it to 784 input neurons, that's basically what we're doing here. We flatten these images by features. And what image features is, you see it up here, we're basically encoding the features of the image. This is like the embedding. And we do .view and image features .shape 0. Shape of 0 means this 1. And then this -1 basically compresses everything into 2048. And from here, we want to project this through the image layer. This is the resulting projection of all the embeddings in 512 dimensions. So we pass it again through the image layer, and we pass this flattened image through there. That is, by this point, now we place the image into this room. And now we have to do the same thing for the text. Now, something I didn't really talk about, and well, I'll mention it right here. The text embeddings have a special token, especially, yeah. Okay, perfect. So CLS is a special token that we have in BERT models. It basically is kind of like the semantic summarization of the whole sentence. So we put kind of a summary of the whole sentence into one token. And this is what we're going to pass through the, so first we're going to find this token. So this is the first, if you remember that, let me find it here. The shape of the embeddings are 1 by 15 by 768. We want to get the first token in that list, which again represents the summary of the whole text. And then we pass that classification. We call it the classification token. You can read about it more in this blog here. Just click the link. We get it, and then we pass it through that text layer. So this is us getting the 768 dimensions and putting it in the same room as the image. So now we basically, from this step, we built this room with all the embeddings in the same embedding space. Is everyone good up till now? Does everyone get the intuition behind why we are doing, why we're coding what we're coding? And if anyone has any questions, maybe on syntax or what the CLS token is, we're good. But the most important thing, again, is that you understand the intuition behind what this code is basically saying. Yes.
So I know we're making there's that bottom portion right there from the image. When it does the neural network, the last layer already, we're trying to condense it from 2048, was it? To 512. It's what exactly is the? I can see that we want to compress it in the first two lines with the text layer, image layer, variables. But the third and fourth one, can you explain how much?
These three, these that I have.
Yeah, actually from there, they're down the flag.
Yeah. Okay.
See the sheet at 0. I don't.
So the flattened, what we have, if you see right here, we have a 4-dimensional tensor. And what we want is to return just like think about it as like a 2D tensor. What we want to return is just the embedding, which the embedding is a vector. Now, the thing is, we can't really pass this through. Again, we want to flatten the image. So this flattened, what we do here is we get the shape at 0, which is 1. That's just the amount of images that we have. In this case, it's 1. When we train through a batch, imagine the batch is 64, we have 64 different images. And this -1, what it does is it basically grabs everything that is apart from that 0, and it multiplies it with each other so that it compresses. The only way you can do this, actually, I think I should mention that, is if everything here is 1. Because think about it kind of in memory, this, you could see it kind of as a 4-dimensional like list, 4-dimensional array. You kind of want to switch the metadata so that it views the 2048 as just its own list. Might have not explained that the best way possible, but again, what it does is we want to transform the 4 dimensions that it has there. We just want it in 2 dimensions. We just want it in the batch dimension, which tells us how many images, and then the actual embedding, the actual embedding dimension. Right now we have those extra ones. We kind of just want to multiply together. If you think of the size of that tensor, 1 times 2048 times 1 times 1 is just 2048 different values inside that tensor. If we reshape it to 2 dimensions, so we take away those last two ones, we have 1 times 2048. There's still 2048 positions in that tensor. So the problem, we can do that there because of that property. The problem would be if maybe the last part of that tensor was a 3. If we were to compress it we have to compress it by 2048 times one times 3, because if not, we'd be like losing data. We can't just turn this 2048 1 and 3. We can't just turn this into 1 and 2048, because there's data here that would kind of just be erasing, basically. So it should be good. Yeah. So what we're doing here, we're just kind of changing the shape of the tensor, but without manipulating the data within it. Because again, if you think about the way you can multiply that data and represent that data, 1 by 2048 is the same as 1 by 2048 by 1 by 1. And that is us flattening it. We want to pass the flattened version of that into the projection. So now the flattened version is literally just one vector that represents the image. And we pass it through that layer, which basically turns this from size 2048 to an embedding of size 512 in this instance. Does that make sense for that one? And now we do the same thing for the text again. The text is 768 dimensions, and we compress it, or we project it to a space of 512 dimensions. The CLS is just one token that represents the whole and summarizes the whole sentence, basically. So we can run this. I don't know, I don't do any shapes, so we do the shapes here. Yeah. And so now you see that the shapes of both embeddings are the same. They're in a 512 dimensional latent space. So again, we stuff them into this room. And remember when I talked about logits, we want to calculate each of these logits for the similarity matrix. So here we do a matrix multiplication. We basically compute the dot product. So we get logits is equal to the image embeddings this means matrix multiplication at the transpose of the text embeddings. You guys remember last lecture, a dot product computes. We have a vector 1, which could be like 0 and 1, and a vector 2, which could be like 0 and 3. And the dot product basically get a scalar value, which again, it would be our logit by multiplying v1 dot product v2, which is equal to v1 times the transpose. So what we'd be doing 0 or 1 times the transpose. We turn this into a row 0, 3, and that would give us some kind of scalar value by multiplying 0 times 0 plus 1 times 3. So this is 0 times 0 plus 1 times 3 plus 3. And that's what we do here, right? You can literally see it in the shape of the matrix. The images stay vertical, the text turns horizontal, and we multiply them. Whatever value we get, we kind of visualize it as a symmetric matrix. And that would give us the logits. In this case, again, we're still doing a demonstration. We haven't put them into class yet.
So I have the actual, could you explain the syntax for that? Or re-explain it? Because I
The syntax?
the @ sign.
Okay, perfect. So first, let's focus on the dot t. The dot t basically takes this 0, 3 and converts it to 0, 3. It does the transpose. The @ is just the matrix multiplication of that. So
It's just like there's
yeah, so instead of us doing like this times, it is just @ and that's we see the shape again. Here we're doing 1 by 1 because we only have one image and one like text encoding. But what we basically did was just one operation of this. We created this spot, this place in the symmetric matrix, in the similarity matrix. Now, what we want to do is do this for a whole batch. And that's what we end up doing when we modularize this code. Now, our loss function, again, contrastive loss. It's what I explained at the beginning. We do the loss, we compare basically how much does this image represent this text, how much does this image represent this text. We compute some value that basically signifies the error of that, how wrong our model is, how far our model is from the ground truth parameters. And then we do the same for the text. How much does this text represent this image? How much does this text represent this image? And we do it down. So we do it in 2 layers. Here is just basically the same math we did here. Just there's more explanation there, I guess, in text. And let's kind of code this part from scratch. Again, this would probably be, out of all of this, the most, it's the reason why this learns. It's the reason why these numbers go up and these numbers go down is because of this loss. So what we want, bit by bit, we want the exponent of the logits, which would just be torch.exp logit stable. Logit stable would just be, again, the raw number, and then we get the exponents. So here we do this. We get the exponents for each. And then we convert this into probabilities. So we get the logits, and we divide it by the summation of the other logits. This turns this into a probability distribution. So now instead of just raw numbers, we actually have a probability that describes how close this is to what the number that we want. Again, we want 1 here, 1 here, 1 here to signify 100%. And this gives us some probability distribution. In this case, 0.712, 71.2%. And again, we want to bring that number as close to 1 as possible. And here we want to do the log probabilities with the negative mean. That would be this part. And that would just be our loss. Again, what we're doing here in cross entropy loss is just a standard cross entropy loss. That is like the standard equation for cross entropy loss. And then in the contrastive loss, we do that thing where we go by row and then by column. So we have 2 different losses, but both equations are still the same. Just what we compare is what's different. So this would be negative torch dot, what do I have? Negative, yeah. Loss equals negative loss probabilities of torch dot a range batch size and labels, and we want the average of this, so we want the mean. Sorry, log props. Yeah, so torch.a range, again, here we're comparing the labels, like what we have, and then torch.a range means, did I write this wrong? Yeah, torch.a range batch size, I'm sorry. Batch size and labels. Yeah. So torch.a range, we're creating our ground truth matrix, which again, it's this one across, and we're comparing it to what we have, the actual labels that we have. And then for the contrastive loss, again, we want to get the labels, which are that torch A range. Again, the labels are what describe our ground truth. We want to attach it to this device. The device equals device just means that if we're using a GPU, we want to pass it through the GPU. And then we do the 2 losses. Loss for the image, which is nothing more than the cross entropy of the logits and the true labels that we have. And well, here I have cross entropy loss. So here we're getting the loci for the logits and the labels for the image. We're calling on this function, we're passing the logits. When we pass the logits, we're doing it down by column. And then we do, for the text, we do loss t, which would be us doing the same thing. Again, remember cross entropy loss, but by the transpose. And remember, the transpose represents this layer of this matrix. And when we get the two losses, we divide them by 2. That is just us getting the average of the two losses. So I'm going to leave this up for a little bit. And yeah. Okay. So again, this is just a very Pythonic way. What we're doing again is this math, and intuitively what we're doing is comparing across the rows and then comparing across the columns. Now here we have the pre-processing data. I don't think we have much like code along parts here. This is the part where I'm scared it might fail because of the like downloading the data sets and that whole weird thing that we had going on with that. So just run these cells. Here we are pre-processing the images. So remember what I said, 224 by 224. And then there's a bunch of normalization here. This is very mathy, very statistics based. And it's what they did for the original ResNet model. You can read about it more in this blog. It would probably explain it like 20 times more than I can. I'm still grasping what any of this means. But again, this is just pre-processing that they did for the original ResNet model. And then here we just want to build our own data set, our own way to describe the data set. So remember, the data set comprises of images and captions. We want to pick a random caption. Remember I said that there are 5 available captions, 5 valid captions. So we don't overfit so we don't overfit and use the same caption each and every time. We want a different description every time we run an epoch. So that we just pick one of the 5 random ones and we just pre-process the images. And here we tokenize the caption that we put. That's basically what's going on here. We just tokenize the caption and we pick and we pre-process the images. And what we return is the image input, the input IDs, and then this special thing called the attention mask. Don't worry about it too much. It's like very transformer-y stuff, like text encoder related things. And we're gonna go over attention more in depth, probably by week 4, which is when we will build our own GPT model from scratch. And now here's like I hope this works. So check your folder here. Check if like the MS Coco dataset is like appears. That means that whole download thing works. Okay, perfect. So try to run this and let's see if this gives you any issues. It should. What this does is create the data loaders and the data sets. I mean, I'm glad it worked fine for me. So okay. Okay, perfect. And here we just want to see, again, here we're just working and pre-processing our data. Here we just want to see our actual data and the amounts that we have. So we have 118,000 training samples. And for validation set, we have 5,000 images. So it's a huge data set. But that should allow our code to, that should allow our model to learn well. So now we have the image encoder. Now we're modularizing it. So everything that we did for one image, we're going to put it into a class, actually build the architecture. So we have the image encoder transformer, so the text encoder, and then we have to make the projection head classes. We've already done this code. So we kind of just copy what I do. It's again the same thing. If you can see here, we're taking out the last layer and we're initializing the model. We did all of this. Here we just want to return the flattened version of our like images. And from here, again, we already did all of this. Here's just putting it in like clean code. Okay, same thing here. For the text encoder, we have our forward passes, so we have to get our outputs. Oops. And we just call the model. And this is nothing like too new. We have the input IDs and then the pass the attention mask. And then same thing here, we are getting the CLS token. And we're returning it. So again, with this text encoder, what we're doing is we're getting this photo of a cat. We're tokenizing it, summarizing it, and getting the summary token to pass through this layer. And it's not output D, it's outputs. Should work fine. And this is our projection head. For reasons of, I guess, to make this more trainable, we pass different activation functions, and we do like a dropout layer where we deactivate some of the neurons. We will understand more processes like these of the actual training next week, of the actual training of the models and why we make some of these architectural decisions. But again, right now, the most important intuition to have is that we are just projecting from one dimension to another. So just worry about writing this code here. We have the projection layer. And again, it's a linear layer where we pass from the embedding layer, the embedding dimension that we have, to the projection dimension. The projection dimension would be 512. The embedding dimension would be either 2048 or 768. This, you can imagine it like we are literally building this part of the architecture if this was like a physical object. Yes. So again, the most intuitive thing to understand here is this self-projection layer. And once we run that, we are kind of just combine it all in here, in this clip class. Again, so this clip class, what it does, we grab the transformer that we made, we grab the image encoder we made, we grab the projection layers that we made, and then through a forward pass, we compute the actual logits. So literally, we're getting the building blocks, we're attaching them, and kind of combining all of those aspects under one bigger clip model. And again, we built all of this ourselves. We declared the text and the image encoders. We passed them to the projection heads. There is this learnable temperature parameter. This is for stability and training. But again, don't worry too much about this. This isn't as important right now as it will be in the future. Just make sure you have an intuitive understanding of what we are building here and how this data flows into this matrix. And then through the forward pass, again, we extract the features, we project them to the same embedding space. This is what happens in one forward pass clip. We normalize them, and then we compute the logits, which, as you can see here, apart from the temperature variable that we have, it is just the dot product, and we return the logits. And during training, I know we built the cross entropy from scratch. We could just use PyTorch's cross entropy module under the functions. And yeah, keep on, we can see like our object is our pixel values. If you remember, the pixel values was the images, and then the input IDs are like the tokens, the attention mask. What we built literally in this part over here in the clip Coco dataset. And now we're declaring our epochs, our training the epoch and our validation epochs. And this is just training the model. And we're gonna do 10 epochs. Let's see. Okay. So just run the code all the way up to trainable parameters. Let me know when you guys get there. And I want to try something out. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't work, we'll train a couple epochs and see the model from there. But let me know when you guys get to this part. Don't run this part yet. Let me know if you guys have any issues up to now. The issues shouldn't start up until we do the pre-trained model part. That part might cause some issues. Okay, just give me 1 second. What am I even connected to? Okay. So now let's try this. So remember the same thing that you guys did for the data set itself. Can you guys please do the same for the pre-trained model? Or well, not the pre-trained model, I guess pre-trained model. This is our model without any training at all. Get this link, same thing.
Let's focus in.
Don't run this training part. The reason being that I want to try with a pre-trained model that I trained, see if that's enough, because if we train this data set right now, it'd probably take like 2 hours. And it took me around like an hour, and that's what it was with an H100. What we could do, well, we're gonna try something because I kind of had some problems with that, but I really want to show you guys like a final result type of thing. So again, try to get the worst model, and do I even have it? Yeah, so go to worst model, go to file, go to add, go to move, it should be move. Okay, it's already here. So in my case, I already have it in my drive. In your guys' case, you guys probably don't. So you guys should add it to your main drive. And here we're getting the path to these weights. What that is, when we save a model, we're saving the already trained weights of the model. And here we just initialize the architecture and we pass the state, we pass like the weights to our model. So we don't have to train it. Yeah, we'll test this out now, but this happened to me by accident because I saved the wrong model while training. But I think that it's actually like a perfect learning experience because here you're going to visualize and be able to see a lot of things. So again, here's a visualization of an already trained model. This was after 10 epochs of training. You see that this is kind of, we want to visualize this, right? The dot products of the logits, the highest numbers should be across this dimensionality, or sorry, across this diagonal, and the lower, like the non-diagonal features should be a lower value. A trained model here, this is pretty well, like this shows it really good. Now, if we get the worst model, again, the bad model, just so that you see before training, this beautiful image, unfortunately, we're gonna, oh, wait, it is a good model. Damn, that's crazy. So worst model might be the trained model. That was the problem that I was having. It might work. Can you guys try to run it and see what it outputs on your side for the model? No? Nothing outputs? Or?
No, I'm focused on like topics like what's going on.
Okay.
I don't have code right now.
Okay. Problem. Well, if this keeps working, then I'm going to keep going down through here. If you guys have problems with accessing the model, the, I guess, pre-trained model, I'm surprised by this. I didn't know that this worked. Because this whole time I thought that I saved the worst model, but thank God. So we have this cool representation that you see that it learned across the diagonal. Now, obviously, it still needs some learning to do. In some places, it still outputs high values where it shouldn't. But in general, I believe that the validation loss was 0.68 for this model, or 0.64, which is really good. Remember, we want to get the whole loss as close to 0 as possible. And here we're going to plot the latent space. Let's see if that works as well. Okay, perfect. So remember when I told you guys that should be showing for all. What we want to do, our goal is to get the images, the image embeddings and the text embeddings as close to each other as possible. This would be kind of a projected representation of that. We project the embeddings into 2D so that we can visualize it, because like I can't visualize 512 dimensions, so we got to put it to 2 dimensions. And you can see, for example, we need some training here. There's a big separation between those two, but as you can see there, like the text and the image embeddings are getting really close together. Now, the reason here I wish that the worst model actually loaded, and I wish that it didn't train, because I'll probably send you guys like an actual image after the meeting, but when this is untrained, you see that the image embeddings are kind of grouped together on one side, and then the text embeddings are grouped together far away. They haven't learned, I guess, they haven't learned the similarities yet. So, and same thing here with this matrix. When this isn't learned, it is just colors all over the place, high numbers all over the place, and there's no actual uniformity. Now, again, here we're testing on just 20 embeddings. So this is a result of our training. And here are some fun metrics, fun things I want to just show you guys. One of the things being zero-shot inference. So here we have like a list of random labels. And if we pass an image through it, we're just going to see like the probabilities of what it thinks that specific image is. So for example, here we have, again, random labels. When I say zero shot, remember, we're testing on images that it has never seen before. So if we search up, well, in this case, I put an image of like and it worked. It declared the best match of the captions as a plate of fresh sushi. Yeah. Again, we're training at 130,000 images. The actual clip was trained on 400 million images. But you see that it could generalize pretty well. And you could probably find the reason for, and again, 33% seems low, but all the other distributions are even. It's not like it's 33% because the rest are also 33%. It's at 33%, but the rest are at 15%. I'm interested, let's try another zero-shot example. Let's try like, I don't know, what were the captions I put? You could put any caption you want. Let's see if it can match something in Chicago. Probably. Let's see if this works. I don't know. I haven't tested it out. Image. Okay. No, this saves as an HTML. Let's do this. Bro, do they not let me download images? There you go. That's too complicated for me. I don't know how to be doing that. Okay, let's try this. Let's see what it thinks. Okay. Now, it wasn't a busy site, well, relatively busy. I've been to the bean. It gets way more busy than that, but it still thinks that the best match is something from Chicago. Now, it also thought pretty close to it. It was students studying at FIU, maybe because of the buildings and the people. And then the sushi, I can't explain that to you. Like, there's no front end that I could do to explain that. But again, we still got to train the model more. And we only trained, this model was only trained on 5 epochs, I believe. So, yes?
So, it says that the best match is busy site Chicago, and this might have been something I missed minutes ago, but the highest percentage is for FIU. By point, oh, that's 22. Never mind.
Yeah, I mean, we're just picking the highest probability. Right now, again, it's not the, yes? You got Chicago?
No, I got FIU.
Okay. I mean, like in general, with these captions, it shows, you know, a good representation of what it has learned with random captions. I actually want to show you guys this other example. we're doing it one way, right? We're trying to match a caption, an image to a caption. If we do it the other way, where we try to match caption to the top 5 like best or top whatever best matches in our validation set, you guys can try it out with whatever text you guys want. In case of fruit, this is what it shows us. I don't know, a photo of a sporting event. There, you know, we see with some like it gives like the ranks of the highest I guess the highest score. It wouldn't, I don't think it would fully be a probability. I think it scores it with top K. So yeah, it'd be like the highest score that it gives to that caption. And I think something interesting, again, we did this on a relatively small data set. Now, again, 130,000, that data set, that MS Coco data set ends up being pretty like high level and industry grade, but the original clip was on 400 million. So we can't necessarily compare to that. But as you can see, our model still generalizes pretty well. And like if you think of in your photos, when you search specific things, I know Apple does it, iPhone does it, Google Photos does it. It brings up, you know, something that's relatively close to what you write. Give me another example, I guess. Of what? Dog?
Okay, what?
So, I mean, it detected enough of an animal maybe eating. We generalize it. It's kind of eating if found food. So again, you could train this a lot more than I was able to train it, but just with a small set of examples and a small training, you can see the model learns pretty well with just 5 epochs. So, you know, in your own time, put 15 epochs, 20 epochs, play around with the hyperparameters, try different batch sizes. That's also good in training. I tried 128 a batch size of 128, try 256, and you could probably see, you know, better representations of this. But give me one more idea. I don't know. Let's see. And also remember, we're just searching throughout this specific data set. Maybe this data set doesn't even have that many dogs. The validation set. Let's see. I guess, yeah. I mean, I don't know why. Maybe. I mean, wait. This is. Oh no, that's
grass. It kind of matches the color of the water.
Yo, but are those boats in the back?
Oh, like the water.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. You could test out a lot of things. It's interesting how it scores these as like the same, with the same confidence, and this one has lower confidence.
That's
We also look at color.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
But yeah, this is basically a small, very small example of clip. Again, the research paper by OpenAI was trained on 400 million examples. 130,000 examples of data is already pretty big. It's a lot bigger than, I started off with 8,000. I didn't like the results, so we shot it up to that. But again, try training this yourself. In the Colab notebook, give me some time to make like a proper repository for all of this. And I also think in your front-facing repository, when you guys build this for yourselves, that it is important also to have like examples of failure, where like the model failed. Like when we searched up the dog, right? We have a bear, we have a cat, and I don't even know what happened here. It's also important to include these examples and kind of talk about why you think it failed. That's sometimes almost as important as actual success. Another thing that you guys can do, I should have written this down for you guys, but if you guys want to compare to like a ResNet 50, the ResNet 50 that we did on last Wednesday, you guys want to compare that CNN attach basically the same labels as this validation data set and compare kind of the accuracy and how it compares to CLIP, that would be like tremendous for your actual project. And I mean, yeah, that's pretty much what we have. This is pretty much CLIP and the architecture. We've implemented it ourselves, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the visualizations. I hope this helped with your intuition, and I hope that you guys could play around with this all you want. Put different labels, put different photos, see what sticks, what doesn't, and play around with the semantic search. You guys basically made, in a way, a little semantic search engine, zero-shot classifier. That, again, it never saw the beam. It's never seen Chicago, but it could presume that this is Chicago. Yeah, thank you guys. And for those of you online, I also hope that you guys enjoyed this project. Again, I will post the repository and also some bullet points for your resumes if you guys are interested in putting this in your resume. It's a really good project, and it really builds your intuition in a way that not many projects do for multimodality and understanding how different data types live inside of one AI model. And yeah, so for next week, we are going to focus on optimization and gradient descent. So let's take that, bless you. Bless you. Let's take that abstract layer of quote unquote train the model, and let's find out what training a model actually means. But yeah, otherwise, thank you guys so much for coming, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this.